Welcome to an audience of one. My name is Nick, and I'm just another troubled soul in this world trying not to give in to the evil thoughts that plague us all. The thoughts that you're inadequate, that your mistakes are insurmountable, that you're too old to change, or the idea that you're beyond forgiveness, hope, mercy, and acceptance, or any of the other ideas that prevent us from fulfilling our potential as human beings and giving the world the gift of our presence and all that our best selves have to offer. I've always loved helping people, especially when it comes to seeing them work towards self-improvement. I love seeing people actualizing their goals and reaching their full potential, which is oftentimes far greater than what they themselves saw themselves as being capable of. For many years, I've worked with people to motivate them spiritually and motivate them to actualize their goals and be the best person that they can be in every aspect of their lives. And unfortunately, over the years, I've never been good at taking my own advice. And for years, I've fought a really difficult battle, mainly in my head, which is that God can forgive anyone, just not me. In the past, I used to be very active online and in the communities that I lived in, but over the past several years, I've faced a lot of difficulties and, difficult situations externally and sometimes self-inflicted that have really just gotten the best of me. And so for a long time, I removed myself from any public engagement on any social media platform or really in any other forum in person. Part of it was due to anger, frustration, and resentment. And a lot of it was also due to the fact that I always felt inadequate, that whatever shortcomings that I had were, in my mind, magnified to a point that they were insurmountable. I get that we're all human, and I get that we all make mistakes and nobody's perfect, but for whatever reason, I could never accept that for myself. And I would let it eat me up inside to the point where it would paralyze me from continuing to do any good. I always thought that my shortcomings somehow disqualified me from benefiting others. Even though I knew that this was an impossible standard that nobody could live up to, I still held myself to a standard that I couldn't live up to. There are many times that people would ask me if you're ever going to produce anything online, and I contemplated it quite a bit back and forth. I think in the beginning I had no interest whatsoever, but after a while the idea kind of continued to pop back into my head that I wanted to produce something, that I wanted to be in some capacity having the ability to benefit others. But there was a complete lack of desire to engage on social media in any form, just due to the unfortunate toxic nature that we as a society have created on these platforms. And then there was always that nagging sense of inadequacy, that I wasn't good enough to be in the position that I'm in right now. There was definitely a concern for, what if somebody finds out I'm not as good as they think I am? And all of these negative thoughts were very paralyzing for a good amount of time. And they still try to creep their way into my psyche and discourage me from getting behind a microphone and a camera and saying what I feel needs to be said. I always felt like I wasn't good enough. I always felt like there was a level of spirituality that I had not yet attained that, again, disqualified me from being the person who's justified to sit in this chair or in front of a camera or behind a microphone. Unfortunately, this mentality of you're not good enough to do good at best leaves you void of good deeds. And at worst, when there's a void of good, it opens up the door for bad. This creates a downward cycle of not doing good and then doing bad, which makes you feel worse and discourages you further from doing any good and opens the door for doing more bad, and it becomes this vicious downward cycle. And if you know, you know. To an outsider, all of this sounds illogical, but the mind can be a maze that can be very difficult to navigate. Eventually, I got to the point where I decided that regardless of whatever mountain of sins I had piled up, that I've never been doing as good as I was doing when I was spending my time trying to and preparing for trying to benefit others. Although I've never felt ready, I still don't feel ready. I've slowly come around to the idea that I'm never going to feel ready. I'll never feel like I'm the right person. I don't think I'll ever feel like I'm good enough. And if I ever hope to even get close to feeling like I'm good enough, I know that that's not going to happen by me passively watching from the sidelines. So at this point, I've come around to the decision that I want to be active again in producing content online and trying to benefit others. I have no intention of trying to get back to where I once was or where I think I once was. I think that's a trap that many of us fall into. We romanticize about where we once were, a state that we once held, that we believe if only we could get back to, that it would fix everything. And unfortunately, our efforts oftentimes to get back to that time or that state, and our failures to do so often cause us to stagnate any efforts to improve ourselves, because instead of just trying to get better than who we are today, we're stuck comparing ourselves to who we think we once were or might have been. This effort is about a fresh start, and I pray that it helps me to reach levels that are far better for me and for everybody else than what I was hoping at some point in time to get back to. So what is this podcast all about? This podcast is going to be a personal letter to me from me. A couple years back, a friend that I had at the time was suggesting that I, put myself out there, produce content, and he had suggested that I start with an idea that if I were to advise myself, what would I say? And that idea helped give birth to this podcast, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I've spent a lot of time over the past couple of years contemplating this idea and taking down a lot of notes and writing up a lot of the content that you're going to get access to as I go along through this process. There were many ideas that I had for, if I were to get back active, what would I produce? And this idea continued to resurface in my mind over and over again. There's a lot of reasons why I think this is the best place to start. There is a lot of performative content that's out there, meaning that I'm going to put together this video or this lecture series or this podcast because I want you to like it. And my primary focus is thinking about what the audience will like, what the audience needs to hear, and that oftentimes gets adjusted based on what the audience wants to hear. Whereas in this instance, I don't really care what the audience wants to hear, but I know what the audience needs to hear. What I also like about this idea is that many of the communities that I've been a part of, I've often felt that, I can just never find anybody that I can relate to with regards to people who are producing content. It's just very hard for me to listen to somebody and feel like they're speaking to me. It's hard to listen to a lot of people and feel like they're even being sincere. And in the positions that I've held, I'm often the one who's delivering the advice and giving the motivational support, but that doesn't mean that I myself am not in need of that as well. But unfortunately, just due to whatever circumstances exist out there, I found it near impossible to find people that are speaking to me on my level in a way that I can relate to, that's really basic, down to earth. I just always wish that I could find someone who could speak to me, someone that could deliver a message that wasn't littered with excessive rhetoric, technical language. And so, combining all of those ideas is leading me to do exactly what I'm going to do, which is delivering a series to myself. Essentially, this is a podcast for me, by me. And each episode, I'm going to start by walking myself off of a ledge all the way to building myself up to a strong spiritual, mental, emotional foundation, and trying to take it as far as I possibly can. This is not just a theoretical exercise. This is actually something that I feel that I need on many different levels, because I need to hear the stuff that I need to say. Again, I've been really bad in the past at taking my own advice, but if I can't hear it from anybody else, I need to at least start speaking it into a camera or a microphone, and then just play that stuff on repeat while I'm driving so that I can, hear the things that I need to hear, because, maybe even as I'm saying it right now, it's not hitting me, and it's not penetrating into the heart as much as I would like it to. But, I know that there's a lot of things that I need to hear. And in the absence of having somebody else that's going to tell me the stuff that I need to hear, the next best thing is to say it myself. On top of that, the process of preparing for something like this means that I have to constantly be thinking about, what would I say to somebody in my situation? How would I advise them? How would I encourage them? How would I motivate them? And that process in and of itself is extremely helpful and motivating to me. But that brings up the question, all right, who's this for? Why are you putting it online then if it's all about you? And there's two parts to this. The first is that, yes, it is for me, 100%. I'm putting this up there for myself. The reason it's going online, first and foremost, is a form of accountability. So now I have a deadline that I have to constantly think about this project and make sure that I am moving it forward each and every single week. Hopefully that accountability helps keep me consistent in my efforts. And the process of preparing to put these shows together constantly puts me in a reflective state of, how do I improve myself? How do I improve my relationship with God and with those around me? And all of that in and of itself is a benefit. Second is that there's no reward for good but good. And I need to stop waiting to become good in order to do good. Rather, I need to do good as much as I possibly can on my way to trying to become great. The second reason is that I have a sneaky suspicion that I'm not the only one who could benefit from hearing this stuff. It's quite possible that this goes nowhere. Nobody ever listens to it. Nobody follows it in any way, shape, or form. And I'm just sitting here in an echo chamber talking to myself. And I am 100% okay with that, because again, this has got to be about me, for me. I have to help myself first and foremost before I can try and help anybody else out. And up until now, this is the best idea that I've come across in order to do that. And I personally feel like it's the most sincere thing that I can do, because again, most of what you see online is all performative, right? You're going to listen to people talking, and there's so much rhetoric and technical language that oftentimes isn't for you. It's more for the ego of the speaker, just so that they can validate that they have the right to speak. And anybody who is on any social media platform producing content, and they aren't deathly afraid of their sincerity and their intention behind what they're doing, is already way past gone. Most people, when they're putting content together to put online, they're thinking about, well, what's going to go over well with my audience? What are they going to like? What are they going to share? What's best for the algorithm? In my opinion, you can see it. It's obvious. It becomes performative. I want to run from that like the plague. I've fallen into that trap myself, so I'm not immune to that either. But I can tell you it's extremely liberating to have the feeling that if you don't like it, I don't care. If you don't watch it, I don't care. If you don't listen to it, I don't care. If you don't like it, I don't care. If you don't share it, I don't care. The audience is me. That's who I'm talking to. But again, I think that it's quite possible that there are a few people out there, maybe 2 or 3, that could relate to some of the situations that I've been through and that I'll speak about, and the advice that might pertain to it. And if I just help one person, if I'm able to reach somebody who, like myself, felt that there's nobody out there that's talking to me on my level, if I'm able to reach that person, then that's an enormous success. That would make every minute, hour that I put into this more than worth it. And in the strange possibility that a lot of people benefit from it, then that's just good upon good, and that's all you could ever ask for. So I'm going to be putting this together for me, but preparing for it as if it will be embraced by many. Worst case scenario, I produce something that helps me improve spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. Best case scenario, we create something really great. So what can you expect as we move along? Again, this is a podcast for me, by me, so I'm going to be addressing myself. I expect these episodes to be short and sweet. About 20 minutes is the goal. This is not going to be a long, drawn-out lecture series. Again, this benefits from the fact that this is by me, for me, and oftentimes I'm left wondering, why are we droning on and on and on? At the end of the day, we just want to get to the point, hit us with what we need for the day, and keep it moving. With regards to the content, you're just going to have to wait and see. I can guarantee you that it is going to be very unorthodox from what you're typically used to. If you're looking for the traditional lecture that you're going to find most places that you go to, then I am going to assure you that you will certainly be disappointed with what I'm about to produce. And if that is the case, then I advise you look elsewhere. The podcast will post up every Friday, and it will also be available in video format on YouTube. Teasers will be posted throughout the week leading up to the episode on Instagram as well as YouTube Shorts. One important point that I want to make is that I will not be engaging with people in the comment sections of social media. Unfortunately, they are often very toxic places. It's nothing personal, but with regards to the negative comments out there, I do not feed trolls. I think it is bad for the environment, and I don't suggest you do either. With regards to the positive comments and the praise, all of that's bad for the ego, and I don't think that it is beneficial for me to consume any of that either. Now, if you want to engage in the comments and have entertaining discussions, then by all means do you. I'm sure it's great for the algorithm, but if you don't see me down there, you know why. When it comes to supporting this podcast and these efforts, the greatest form of support that you can show is by sharing the content if you believe that it is beneficial and that it resonates with you, or that it will resonate with others, that you share it with friends, family, and community members that you think would benefit from it. If you want to support this podcast, because money makes the world go round, and the more that I'm able to get support from people like yourselves, the less I have to work at ABC Company. And the less that I work at ABC Company, the more time and effort and energy I can put into producing this, as well as other projects that will be coming. Because this podcast is just the beginning. Eventually, the website will host courses as well as community forums that all supporters will be able to benefit from and have access to. In the past, I used to use Patreon as a platform for people who wanted to support the work that I was doing. The platform gave followers and listeners the ability to financially support the efforts so that we could continue to produce and promote the content that was being put out. So those of you that would like to support this podcast financially, you'll definitely have the opportunity to do so. And that will be directly through our website, JannahVersity.com. And any of you that choose to support this project will have eventually access to all of the courses that we put up on JannahVersity.com, as well as the general community forums that will be present there. Just like Patreon, you'll have the ability to donate on a recurring basis, whatever amount that you feel comfortable with. There's no specific perks associated to donating more if you decide to do so. My experience in the past is that the vast majority of people who supported the projects that I worked on didn't look at it as something that was transactional, and they were just hoping to gain the reward of supporting something that they believed in. That being said, courses are going to take some time to produce, and I am not going to rush myself in any way. The main priority right now is just to get the podcast off the ground, up and running. But we're not going to wait until it's perfect in order to build it, and hopefully some of you that decide to support it will help us along the way as we build it to be what we want it and envision it to be, which is a space where people come together and support each other in their efforts to improve themselves spiritually and in every aspect of their lives. Although I'm really excited about JannahVersity and I have a lot of different plans for it, I don't want to foreshadow too much. I just think it's important to note that there is a plan and there is a lot of things that will be developed on that platform. The main thing right now is just getting the podcast up and going. The main focus is that many of us are not living up to our full potential, myself included. I've always had a passion for motivating others and seeing them progress through their own self-development, and I would like to continue to do that. But I always have to make sure that I don't lose focus of working on myself first. So before this becomes a podcast or a platform that benefits many, it has to first start out as an audience of one.